Hello, everybody, and welcome to Recovery Machine. In our last news segment, we talked a bit about stressful workplace conditions and how it seemed like conditions are becoming more and more challenging each year. The type of situations that these healthcare workers are facing daily got us thinking about some of the circumstances over the years that we've both faced as healthcare professionals. In particular, the type of situations where you're going through your day and everything's going fairly standard, fairly routine, and then you have a situation that pops up and it shoots your stress level and your cortisol levels way up. And I can recall some of these situations where I had a thing. Usually it was Friday, and if on Friday I had 3 of these types of customers come in, I could handle the first one. It was annoying. The second one was, I had to use some coping skills and breathing techniques and stuff. And then if another one came soon after that, which only happened maybe 2 or 3 times in my career, but you reach a level where you are gassed out. There's your compassion, your empathy, your patience with people has been exhausted. And we were talking about this off the air and kind of jokingly said, what if we did a segment about things that made us want to use drugs? And thought that was kind of it's a little bit tongue in cheek or whatever, but it basically got us to thinking about putting together a compilation of just a few, like a list of things that were, maybe they would be surprising to somebody who didn't work as a nurse or a pharmacist. So we've put together a list. I think we've got about 10. Do you something like that? I think I've got 10. So 10 each of things that we've encountered, and maybe we'll just go back and forth. No particular order. We'll just read them out. And I think if you guys like this and you can relate to some of these stories, I think there may be, a couple of them are pretty entertaining. Some of them are, I don't know, not they're entertaining, but frustrating. And if there's any stories that you relate to, or any stories that you might have that you would like to send to us, what we're going to do is probably run a contest. So I will put together the contest details and maybe add that in a section after this recording. And I'll let you guys know where to send your stories, and then maybe send us 2 or 3 of your best kind of workplace stories in healthcare, and we'll put them all together. Then we're going to do a contest, and probably the top 3 will win prizes, something like that.
Yeah.
So to give you an idea of what kind of stories we're looking for, we will begin. So things that made us want to do drugs in healthcare. What do you got, Corey?
I was going to say before I began my list that so many of my stories are like, I don't want them to be all just heavy. There's so many that were around like human tragedy and some devastating things that I want to uphold people's confidentiality and privacy, but also that are just like, it's just too much. And I kind of, in thinking about the list of things, I did think of that, like, geez, I've seen some devastating human experiences. But I've also seen, I've also been in positions kind of like what I imagine it's like at Surrey Memorial in that story we were just talking about, where you're just stretched to the max. So one thing that comes to mind for me was arriving on shift, and where there would typically be 4 or 5 people working together, nurses, not including a physician, and being one of 2 that had arrived. So there's 2 people on shift, and there's, let's say, in a small site, 20 people in the waiting room. So in an emergency department, you need to triage people. You need to bring them in. You need to set them up so the doctor can see them. You need to initiate any treatment that they may require, and then they need to be discharged within a couple of hours.
Mhm.
And so that leaves two people to do all of that. And triaging alone is a one-person job. Well, it's more than a one-person job, but the person who is triaging and you got a full waiting room, they can only really do that.
Right.
And so that leaves the other person to absolutely run ragged.
Mhm.
And I can think of a number of times where I had to, be in charge and run myself ragged to keep up with the influx of people that were coming in, the doctor's orders, moving people through, getting their treatment, getting them out the door. And I mean, like to the point where it is a physical workout.
And a mental workout, I would imagine.
And of course, and a mental workout, but like where you feel like you can literally feel the physical and mental tax occurring on you.
Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking, like, if you were in a restaurant and there are 20 tables that needed service and you're one server, and say your other server's doing the triaging, so that's your host.
Yeah.
What and you're trying to run around keeping track of everybody's orders and what they need, and pay attention to who got what at what time, and you've got to you're trying to listen to a doctor, and that's pretty wild. If the staffing was supposed to be like 4 or 5, I think there's probably a mark they're aiming for there, like maybe a nurse per 5 patients or something, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think what's important about that is like that was late in my career. So my response to the environment was already in place. Like I think I already felt a sense of like a sense of rumbling anxiety being there. So having to run around and do 100 things at once for way too many people that any human being can safely keep track of. My heart rate would have been up. My blood pressure would have been sky high. I think that physiological response to the pressure and to the anxiety would already be way up here.
Yeah, just listening to that makes me want to do drugs.
Yeah,
honestly.
And I mean, 3/4 of my career was around a really, really high volume of patients. I mean, that's just a normal thing in an emergency department. It's exactly what we've been talking about. It's just the standard that it's going to be that busy. But being that busy and then taking away 3/4 of the staff is absurd.
Yeah.
Absurd.
Wow.
In hindsight, like on this one particular day that I have in mind, the door should have been closed. It should have been diverted. Like there was no sense of safety. And if something had happened, it would have been on us. It would have been on myself, the one other nurse, and the one doctor, and our professional licenses.
Yeah. So you go to the emergency department thinking you're going to get help, and you get injured.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy.
Okay, what have you got?
So I thought of a few. They're all community pharmacy related. The first one was one of these situations where it was a Friday. This was the third difficult patient in a row. And the reason this one caused me to, what happened here is I put down my workplace persona because I was so baffled by this individual's behavior that I needed to talk to them as a human being. Not just a human being, but I needed to address the situation as Nathan McLean, not the pharmacist, as in I don't care what happens now. We're on even playing field, even ground. I need to know what's going on in your head. So a while ago, it's probably, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago now, they came out with tablets of medication that basically cured Hep C. I don't know if you remember that. And these medications were very expensive, and they happened to be covered by the government, which was amazing. I mean, what a thing to have, what a great thing to have as a part of your healthcare, that this, first of all, that this medication comes available. So all of a sudden you've got, if you're a Hep C patient, you can get this under control. Fantastic news. On top of that, the government is willing to pay for this medication. It's most of them are a 28-day, usually a 28-day course. So just it'd be about $30,000 for a bottle of one of these, the one we were using anyway. I haven't looked at them for a while, but they're probably about the same. And we had a guy come in, and we'd explained to him that because the medication was very expensive, we had to make sure that the insurance was under control before we even ordered the medication. Once we ordered it, we called the patient and told him that it was available, but because our software only allows us to put 4 digits in the price of a drug, we can't bill the same drug the same day. We had to tell him that, and the insurance companies were working on figuring out a way around this, and so was the software team. But because the drug was new, we explained to him that we couldn't give him the whole 28 days in one shot. We would have to bill it in 3 increments. So he could either, wait until the billing cycle was complete and pick up all the medication to start, or if he wanted to start it right away, which is what I suggested he do, he could pick it up in just like pick up the first, say, 7 days, pick up the next 7 days or 8 days, and then pick up the last remaining fill in 3 increments like that. So we'd explained all this to him, and he comes in and he's decided that he wants to pick up all the medication right now because he's a truck driver, and he doesn't want the inconvenience of having to come back and pick up the medication 2 more times, even though he lives in town. It's a small town. And I proceeded to explain again how, what we'd already talked to him about. My tech had went over with him about how there's no way for us to do that, because that would be the equivalent of, like, it would be like saying, here's $20,000 worth of extra medication, and we hope that the insurance goes through. Like, if the insurance doesn't go through, then how am I going to explain to the owner of the store that I just gave out $20,000?
Right.
And yeah, and he's accusing me of like not giving a shit about him, about how inconvenient it is for him to have to come back to the store twice, and just being like, just giving me a really hard time. And because maybe that doesn't sound like much, but because I was late in the week and I'd had a couple of rough patients in front of him, the first thing I did is I stopped and I put in a tech, and I said, I need a breather from this guy. And then I thought about it, and I was like, you know what? No, this is one where I gotta go back and figure out what's going on. And so I went back and I said, look, man, like, do you understand how entitled you look to me right now? Do you understand how preposterous your request is in light of what you're getting here? You live in a country where some team of scientists have just come up with a miracle drug to cure you of a condition that, as far as you knew you were going to have for the rest of your life, was probably going to shorten your life. That alone should be enough for you to be jumping up and down with joy. Like, if I was in your shoes, I'd be, how do I get this medication? When is it available? What do I have to pay? Oh, it's $30,000. It's expensive. Well, to hell with it. I got to fucking have this stuff, right? Oh, wait, it's covered. It's covered by our government. The taxpayer is going to collectively get together and help you. You don't have to pay anything for this drug. We're giving it to you. All you have to do is pick it up in 3 increments. That's it.
Yeah.
Your hep C is cured. Now, what is your problem with that? And the guy went ballistic and challenged me to a fight in the parking lot. And I was like, he's a older dude, 50, not in great shape. And I was like, okay, this is when I get off. I got no issues with that. What I do on my own time, If you think this is a big enough deal that you want to physically fight me, you will. Like, this is not going to go well for you. But if this is what you think is the best course of action, I got the black truck in the back parking lot there. At 6 o'clock is when I'm done. That's where I'll be. And I've never seen the guy, but that's,
you didn't.
No, I didn't see the
Okay.
guy. No. Thank God, because that would have been Yeah, I don't know how that would have went for my career, but uh, yeah, just what do you call that? Entitlement, I guess. And we see a lot of that.
Yeah, and that it fits really perfectly with the next one I'm about to talk about. But like those are really damaging to the human spirit. Like when your desire to help a human being is met with aggression and hostility and personal blame,
Mm-hmm.
it can be really, really soul crushing.
It is
And
soul crushing because you think my initial thought was, oh my God, this guy's going to be so thrilled. Like, I mean, wouldn't you be happy that if I had something like Hep C that was beating up my liver and I thought I was going to have it for the rest of my life, and all of a sudden now I've got something that could like cure it in a month,
yeah,
I would be very pleased.
yeah.
But it's, and I don't know what that guy was going through. And, looking back, I handled the situation poorly, but,
Well, it sounds like you handled it like someone who the system was already taking a toll on.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's what I hear.
I was worn down. Yeah.
When I hear you describe yourself in that moment too, that's someone who's the effect of the system is already well established.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the example that I have for myself is kind of, I don't think that the toll of the system was as well established on me in this stage yet. But I recall an incident when I was working in a large emergency department, and there was this infamous hallway where any overflow patient went. And unfortunately, the hallway was so big that you could get like 20 patients in it, maybe 25 even on a really, really busy day. And it would get to a point where stretchers would be 6 inches apart on either side and lined up in a row. And then you'd have a line of chairs for ambulatory patients, the chairs pressed up against each other against the wall. And then each person, because, there were a lot of people that were vulnerable or elderly or whatever, where they would need a family member to be with them. So you would have 20, 25 patients, and in some cases, a dozen family members in there with their loved one. And these were people who, in some cases, with acute illness, but there was just literally nowhere else to go. And being the nurse in charge of a department like that, where it's over capacity by 40 people, say, so there would be 100, maybe 125 people in the whole department, 130 people in the whole department. And the buck stops at you. Mm. And I recall one incident where there was an angry family member, and I had an office that I would barely be in, but I would do my report at the end of the shift, kind of a thing, and write up the report for the next shift coming on and do any paperwork that I had to do. And there was an angry family member of a patient, and he had come at a female nurse, and was very angry with her. And I need to talk to someone right now. And this was like right at the end of the shift, so maybe 6:45. And she, at no fault of her own, said, well, if you want to talk to someone, he's right in there in that office. And so this is an office with no egress, with no way to get out of there. Mm-hmm. If someone's standing in the doorway. And this very large older man came into the doorway and had me cornered in there, and absolutely tore a strip off me for the state of the department. And mm-hmm. and how dare you, and what the hell are you doing about it? You're doing nothing. You don't give a shit. Mm-hmm. And that kind of pointed accusatory language. And what I should have told him was to get the hell out of there and to back off, and should have gotten security to drag him out of there. But was so, and I think I did eventually escalate it to someone else in the hospital. But what I recall is, like, I lived 25 minutes from the hospital, and by the time I got home, that had been, a good 45 minutes, say, after that incident. And my heart rate was still elevated. I was still in this like totally anxious, furious, hyper aware, excitable state. Mm-hmm. Like cortisol would have been through the roof. Like to have someone cornering you, yelling at you, accusing you of doing harm when you've just spent 12 hours of trying to do your best to help your fellow human.
And full well the state of affairs.
Yeah.
It's not like it's a surprise to you that you're you know that you don't have access to the resources. There's nothing you can do about it. You're just trying to do your best with what you have, and this guy's taking the whole situation out on you.
Yeah. And again, so that didn't at the time, that didn't make me want to use drugs, as we were saying, but it was really crushing to my spirit, because it became one of many incidents that I could recall where I felt, like you said, entitlement, felt hostility, and a physical threat to my well-being and my safety because of someone else's attitude and experience. Mm-hmm. And no one in a workplace, or no one should have to experience that, but someone who's working in a field of trying to help other people should really not have to experience that.
Yeah.
Violence in the workplace has come to the surface more since that incident occurred with me, and I can think of many other incidents of violence and a couple that I'll highlight today, but there's a really human toll on that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And again, timing being a bit of a factor there, where it's at the end of your shift, you're out of fuel,
Exactly. And I think in hindsight, learning what I have learned now, like my body's physiological reaction to that and how elevated I was throughout my whole body, that was really harmful. And I should have called in the next day.
Yeah.
I went right back 7:00 the next morning. I remember that, but I should have said to hell with it and just been kind to myself and restored.
Yeah. No tools and lack of awareness, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. My next one is another entitlement one, but it was very early in my career, before you come out of school and you think, oh, yeah, I'm going to help some people. This is going to be pretty good. And it takes about, I don't know, a month or two, and you go into sort of like a state of shock, because you realize how much different the job is from what you were told it was in school. But this was one that I didn't have a reaction to, other than I was just stunned, and it was too early in my career to even understand but anybody who works in a pharmacy will recognize the way people describe they think of, like, this gentleman came in, and he was, I think, 3 or 4 days early to refill his diabetes medication. So he's got, severe, I wouldn't say late stage, but heading in a bad direction, diabetes. His numbers in the morning were like 18, 19, 20 type blood glucose. So way out of control. His A1C was terrible, and he looked rough. Wasn't taking care of himself, and was relying mainly on the medications to help mitigate the progression of this disease. So he comes in to pick up his medication, and there's a charge on his metformin, and it's a $20, it's not very expensive, but it's $20. And I don't know what this guy's economic situation was, but the response is, oh, I don't pay for my meds. And anyone who's worked in pharmacy will have heard that I don't pay for my meds many, many times. And it's an interesting statement, because it says a lot about the individual, I think, where it's, I am special. I am covered for my medication. I don't pay for my meds. Those are my meds already back there. So you can just give them to me, and I don't pay for them. That's the general kind of attitude. So when I explained that, he was a little bit too early, in other words, he went through his medication that the doctor prescribed. So he either went through them a little bit fast, or he must have had a couple left in a jar at home or something. If he just finished those up and came back and got the rest, he would then be covered and everything would be okay. Nope, I don't have any left, and I'm not paying for my medication, so you can just keep them. And walks away. And in my mind, I'd been, this is when it was early. I was like, man, it's only $20. Like, man, your blood glucose is like way high. I was going to tell him, I'll pay if you want. Like, I'll buy them for you. Just take them, man. Like, I'm thinking, first things, that's your dick and your eyes. That's what I'm thinking, right? Those are the first two things that are going to go. And you're going to You're going to sacrifice that, your vision and your penis for $20? I don't know. I thought it was an interesting kind of like an early look at how people, their level of responsibility for their own care. Even as an adult, this person didn't want to do anything, didn't want to take any responsibility for the illness in the way of exercise or eating better or anything like that. Wanted the drugs and would not even, like, whether he had drugs at home they hadn't used yet or whether he went through them too fast, I don't know, but would not pay an extra $20 at that time to take a medication that, would have immediate benefit. I that was a real eye opener, like an early eye opener for me.
These are sort of like, one of the themes already that we're drawing on are some of the flaws or some of the byproducts of our strained public system.
Yes.
Aren't they?
Yeah. There's problems. And I think there's solutions to those problems, but that would be another show.
Yeah, totally. So the next one that comes to mind for me, just on the theme about violence, whether it's verbal and emotional violence or physical violence, and I can think of many examples, too many examples of physical violence in the emergency departments. And anyone who works in the ER for a number of years knows that it's a violent place. But I recall one incident where, at 3 or 4 in the morning, in a large facility, there was a commotion and a call for help kind of a thing, and an individual was picking up a large recliner chair. And now these recliner chairs, for anyone who knows, are ones on wheels. They're about 4 feet high at the back and about 3 feet wide, and probably they must weigh over 100 pounds. And an individual was attempting to pick it up to throw it at staff. And if you can imagine, and I've seen incidents where things get thrown and where someone will throw a tray, a food tray, or throw something like that. But any individual who has the capacity and ability to be able to pick up a large recliner chair to throw it at the staff, and
he was going to crush you guys.
That's really, really just, or another patient.
Right.
The terrible possibilities were endless there. So myself and security tackled this individual to get him away from being able to pick up a chair.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the amount of times, and we've talked about this in some of our discussions about mental health, where someone comes to the ER who is having an acute experience of a mental health condition or withdrawal or something like that, and they end up like tackled and strapped to a bed. And that's like the only, or at least the most drawn on solution that healthcare has at this point, when they are short staffed and when they have other people to consider and stuff, that it ends in a moment of violence and tackling a person and strapping them to a bed.
Mm-hmm. And
if you are a male staff member or a male staff member of any size, it ends up being you who's doing it with security.
Yeah.
And I look back, we chuckle at that because the image is ridiculous of someone picking up a reclining chair.
Mm-hmm.
But like, what a shitty outcome. Like, this guy probably did need help. I don't remember what the story was with him, but the threat, like the feeling of a physical threat, feeling heightened and escalated from that, and then you've just had to physically intervene on someone when I'm not a fighter,
mm-hmm.
and the risk of injury and like strain, and then okay, back to the shift, and
right.
I've still got 5 hours to go.
Right.
And then you have to, and that's a common thing that I experienced, was like trying to come down from like this moment of elevated adrenaline and cortisol, trying to bring yourself down when there's no, it's never, hey Corey, go take half an hour and relax. Maybe if you're lucky, then you're working and there's enough staff to permit that. But most times it was just like, nope, keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going.
That's wild. And you wonder, with patients who have reached that level of frustration where they're having a freak out like that, if there was adequate resources I wonder how many of those situations could have been stopped before they started, you know?
Oh yeah. And I mean, I know that in the facility that I'm speaking of, they've since built a dedicated mental health section. So at the time there was not a dedicated mental health section. So you had people coming in with mental health concerns or substance use concerns that were in a kind of like a general population of people right next to a elderly lady with a UTI or a person with a cardiac issue or something like that. So there was just no barrier there, no ability to kind of like contain the situation either, or to get out of it. It was just like all one dangerous melting pot.
Right. So you come in there having a panic attack, and then next thing you know, you got a guy dropping a reclining chair on your head.
Yeah, and if you think about it, if you were in a state of like psychosis or acute anxiety, and
oh my god,
being in an ER where there's a lot of people and loud alarms and loud everything, it's just not therapeutic in the least.
No, quite the opposite.
Yeah.
My next one is not one that it made me laugh more than anything, but it's just it was a funny thing that I wish there was somebody else on shift with me when it happened, because it was just me, and I was working in a small pharmacy, and I think it was just standing there behind the counter putting together a script or something, and there was 2 or 3 well-experienced ladies, maybe in their 80s, I guess, standing out at the vitamin section there. And I always kind of, as a pharmacist, you keep your ears open, because lots of times you're going to get a question, and it helps if you're listening, you already know what they're going to ask, and you've already got an answer ready. You know how it works. And so they get to talking about, they're looking for vitamin D. So they're talking about all the different benefits of vitamin D. And I was just kind of standing there and listened to their discourse. And the one was like, I love D. If I don't take it, I get depressed. And the other one pipes it on, you must take D every day. And I'm kind of like, sort of chuckling to myself a little bit. And they're all talking about the different types of D. They just keep calling it D. And it's like, they're talking about the different types of D they've tried over the years and stuff. And I'm looking around, and there's nobody there. I'm like, should I record this conversation? Like, this is awesome, right? And then the one lady picks up, like, we had the value packs of them or whatever, like the 500 pack. And she's like, oh, look at this big one, and they're all, they proceeded. It was probably like a 10-minute conversation about, just various iterations of how their appreciation for D. And I was like, come on, man. This is a day when I'm standing here by myself. I don't even have a tech, nobody to verify this hilariously awesome conversation. But yeah. And then one of them asked, would you say something like, we got some questions about your D or something? Because they always say that it's like the vitamins are like mine, because I'm the pharmacist. Right?
Yes.
And I it got to the point where it's very, I'm trying, because they don't know what the fuck they're saying, right? But I'm trying to keep a straight face, or maybe they did know and they were just like outrightly, hey, let's go fuck with this pharmacist. I don't know. But yeah, that was a real test of my professional visage. I had to like keep it together while I'm explaining this stuff to him. But yeah, I just thought that was a kind of a funny one to throw in.
It sounds like Saturday Night Live wrote that.
Yeah, it's like, come on, man. And they were relentless, like on and on it went. 10-minute discourse on how much they love D.
Well, the next one that comes to mind for me is I'll title it kind of unexpected outcomes. And when you've done the job, and I would imagine it's very much the same in pharmacy too, that when you've done the job, or when you know a drug or know a course of a treatment, it becomes very expected, and you can kind of bank on it turning out a certain way. And in the ER, doing an acute intervention on someone, or offering a treatment, you feel confident in that, and you develop a confidence in what you're giving, in the drugs that you're giving to people. And I can think of one incident where, in the case of someone who had had a stroke, and as a young nurse, I was fairly new out of my ER specialty, and gave this drug that can reverse the symptoms of an ischemic stroke, but it can also dislodge any kind of a clot and move the clot along.
Mm-hmm.
So in theory, it could actually make things better briefly and then worse. But I'd given it before and it had made things better. And you can sometimes see quite miraculous outcomes where someone will have symptoms of an ischemic stroke and you give the drug and they can move their limb again or their facial droop goes away. And that was what I had done. I'd given this drug and there was a brief, maybe 3 to 5 minutes where the person was starting to, I think, move both limbs a little bit. And it was, their family was there witnessing this. And then obviously it had dislodged a clot and their symptoms became like devastating. And I was, maybe 25 years old and fairly new to the ER and new to that specialty. And it was devastating because everything I'd learned was that it would have this outcome and I had given the drug and it was having that outcome. And then, oh my God, devastating. And seeing that there could be a adverse effect from something that I had delivered to someone.
Mm-hmm.
And that with the support of a doctor, and there was a whole team there, and that person ended up actually recovering and doing okay. But what I remember so vividly was that feeling of like, oh, I was a part of doing something that actually made things worse.
Yeah. I imagine. I think it's something that a lot of people don't understand about medicine in general, but even as practitioners, it's always risk versus benefit. And there's no such thing as a magic bullet drug.
Yeah.
It's just, and you want things to work out for the best. And most of the time it does do what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
But there's always that lingering chance, and it's going to happen. Every once in a while, you're going to get one of those. And it's unfortunate that happened, especially when you're like in your 20s like that. That must have been, I don't know, how did you, like, you must have thought about that for days, I bet.
I did. Like days. And then, I think there was a circumstance where we were able to kind of keep track of that individual or hear an update. And I, finally started to hear that he was walking and recovering and stuff. And that made me feel a little bit better. But those are things that get internalized by the person, and the healthcare system, again, kind of assumes, because of like that ego and like that style of like, oh, just, you can grin and bear it. You can grin and bear anything because you're a healthcare professional and you work in an ER. So you're really tough. But it's like, I was devastated because it just felt like I felt responsible, and it was not an error. It was not an error in the dosage. It was no error at all, but it was one of the risks that was associated with the drug that the person and their family knew, but it just like, oh, damn it.
Yeah.
It happened, and I carried that.
You're following protocol.
Yeah. I think in hindsight, like that would be one where I probably should have not even necessarily gone into a therapist, but talked to someone within the team, or said to like my manager or a doctor, hey, I need to just sit and talk about this for 20 minutes and just like unload this and help me internalize the fact that this was not my fault.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about that, probably there are incidences that happen like that, almost daily across our province or across our country. And that there are humans on each side of that, on the family and patient side, but also on the healthcare side, that are impacted by that.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that it was impacting me. And I remember I had talked to my family about it a bit, but I wish I had have done more to unload that and not carry it.
Yeah. Well, you don't even, I mean, in your 20s, you don't even think about stuff like that, No.
And then you're so busy, and work is so busy, that you just keep going. And then you get thinking about the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. But that moment, if you pay attention to your thoughts, which I've since learned to do, that moment is actually lingering there.
Mm-hmm.
And like, how many times a day was I thinking about that patient? It was more than I was cognizant of.
That's right. Yeah. And once enough of those things once you have enough of those stockpiled, then the queue gets pretty long, right?
That's right.
Yeah. The next one I have was an example of the disparity between how the average healthcare professional is treated, as far as, like what happened to me and you with the college. And it's not a fun procedure to go through, and everyone's going to deal with it their own way. But there's, regardless of what anyone says, there's a punitive type style that's or angle or aspect to it that's involved. I don't think anyone could deny that. So, and if you go on any healthcare professional college's website, they'll usually have a disciplinary committee with active cases that they're looking at, and some of which, based on the level of their, if it's a really flagrant case, they'll be listed publicly, usually even with the person's name if it's bad enough, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So when I was working for a pharmacy owner, and the pharmacy owner was, there's different levels of risk and kind of different things that different owners are willing to do to make money and to make their business more successful. And I've seen, people who follow the letter of the law all the way up to people who are grossly abusing the system. And I didn't know, I knew this individual was up to some kind of, was definitely pushing it, but I later found out that they had got caught. They had been doing this. The owner had figured out a scam with one of the hospital pharmacists at a nearby hospital, and was basically getting the hospital pharmacist to order up generic drugs that they had on their formulary. And then the community pharmacist owner would go in and purchase those drugs cash at a greatly reduced price and give the cash to the pharmacy manager in the hospital, who would then just increase their budget, right? So each year they would keep increasing the budget. And I think they got away with this for many, many years. Might have been even 20 years they were doing this. So the hospital pharmacy manager was just getting a bag of cash, right? Because those are drugs that he doesn't pay for, obviously. That's hospital formulary drugs that the taxpayer pays for. And then the community pharmacy owner was purchasing those drugs at a greatly reduced price, and then using them for their pharmacy operations. So instead of to explain how advantageous that would be, it would be, instead of getting like say 18% margin on a regular prescription, now you're getting like a 50% margin,
Yeah.
So and when you're in a high volume store or have multiple stores, and you're able to source, basically your drugs for next to nothing, obviously you do very well. So, everybody has to make their own decisions about how they want to run their business. But what shocked me was when this individual was caught, because of their wealth and because of their ability to hire a certain level of lawyer or team of lawyers, they never had their name once mentioned, not by the college, not by the news. There was a small article in the local paper that actually mentioned I believe they mentioned the hospital manager. His name got mentioned, but the owner never, it never came to light. Yeah. And I wouldn't even have known about it unless I pay attention to these type of things and had somebody bring it to my attention. And to this day, I don't think any of the people who work for him and it didn't miss a beat, didn't affect his business, doing just as well as ever. I mean, yeah, it's interesting that the college has this way of presenting a front that's all cases are treated with dignity, respect, and equality, blah, 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 unless you have money. Then it's a whole different thing. And I've seen that with Obsidian clients too. Once a client has a certain level of money and they're able to afford, there's lawyers on the Lower Mainland that specialize in protecting healthcare professionals. And if you can afford those lawyers, the difference it makes in your outcome with the college is you can't believe that it's the same thing, So yeah, interesting, frustrating.
It must have generated some cynicism in you.
even more
or some
cynicism.
or like further disillusionment.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought that was particularly egregious. Like,
it is for sure.
Hello, Recovery Machine listeners. As promised, we'd like to hear your stories about workplace situations that pushed you to the limit. Write them down, record some audio, or share a video with us. We'll put it together in a segment for the show, and the top 3 will win some cash. Coworker driving you crazy? Customer or patient making you think you're going to show up on the evening news? Tell us what happened, and you could win some money. So email us at us@recoverymachine.org. us@recoverymachine.org. That's us@recoverymachine.org is our email. So send those to us or share your files with us. And yeah, we'll see who's got some stories. Thanks, everybody. And thanks for listening.